This brief video is to discuss the community analysis outline and review what we may have gone over in class. As it says, you're to write directly on this paper, and this paper should look very similar to the needs assessment outline. So it says right here, at this point, you should list all the articles and web pages that you've used, any sources you've used, using APA format. They get listed before Roman numeral 1. So what you're actually doing is putting a reference list here so that I can look at the references you're using. You can just add to the NA paper references, or you can just put references you've used for this outline. Whatever you cite below this definitely needs to be in this list so that I can look it up. Roman numeral 1 says list the problem and your specific population, and that's very important. You need to list the problem from your grant, which you should be fine-tuning as we go, and I need to know your specific population or community. It would be the population, any clarifying factors on the population, and where they are. So for example, African Americans in Ward 7 of DC, or Hispanic Americans living on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, or seniors living in Arizona, or seniors living in Phoenix, Arizona. So whatever it is, you need to be very clear about who they are and where they are. Then we get down to the risk factors. So it says list risk factor 1, and that comes from the needs assessment outline or needs assessment feedback, or you may change your risk factors at this point, and there may be a risk factor you have never discussed. But what you're going to do is list one risk factor, then you're going to list the secondary data. Remember, secondary data are data that's already collected for you, but the data must be about your community. So in your needs assessment outline and paper, you had data about the U.S. Now you need data for your population in your community. And in class, we talked about ways you could find that information. So you'll list the source in text citation, for example, so there's the author, the local health department, and the year, and then you need to state specifically what you found from that source on this risk factor. Remember, the goal of the outline is for you to write your paper from the outline. So the information you provide in the outline must be specific enough that I know what you're going to write. And when you go to write your paper, you can use this outline to do most of the writing. So after you list your sources for whatever that risk factor is, you then have to communicate what primary data is needed and how you would collect it. So for example, the focus groups to discuss X, Y, and Z. In-person interviews set up at local churches and synagogues and mosques to discuss ABC. So you need to be very clear on how you're going to collect that primary data. I expect you to use the terminology from the class lessons on community analysis and primary data. So then, just to clarify, I have not changed this yet, but I should. In prior semesters, Online 06 was the needs assessment outline. So for every risk factor, you're going to be using the needs assessment outline or needs assessment feedback. You're going to write your second risk factor, secondary data, primary data. And you repeat that for all your risk factors. Remember, a key issue at this point is if you're missing something, I would expect you to write why you're missing it. So let's say you have community stigma about healthcare as a risk factor, and you have not found anything about your community for that. You would write, I cannot find this information. I have not found this information so far. Or if you need help, I need help finding better sources for this information. So whatever it is that you need goes right in this outline so I can help you get what you're missing. I would expect 2 to 3 of your risk factors to have secondary data. And you cannot do primary data listing unless you have secondary data, because the primary data are designed to supplement or support secondary data that you have collected. So again, that is the community analysis outline. First, your reference list goes at the top, the specific problem and your community, and then for each risk factor you're using, secondary data, the source and where the year and what it states, and then what primary data you would need to collect. If you have any questions, please make sure you reach out. Thank you.